injured mother bear stumbled into a birthday party. The unlikely saviors were just kids. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The air buzzed with excitement in the Miller family's backyard. Colorful balloons danced in the gentle spring breeze, their strings tangled among streamers that crisscrossed the garden. Today was Oliver Miller's 10th birthday, and his parents had transformed their yard into a child's paradise. A long table covered with a blue tablecloth stretched across the patio, laden with plates of half-eaten cake, scattered candy wrappers, and cups of melting ice cream. Oliver, a freckle-faced boy with curious hazel eyes and unruly brown hair, laughed as he chased his best friend Theo around the yard. His new sneakers, a birthday gift from his grandparents, left imprints in the soft grass as he ran. Behind them, 8 other children participated in an impromptu game of tag, their excited screams filling the air with the pure, unbridled joy that only exists in childhood celebrations. At the edge of the Miller property, a dense forest of pine and oak trees stood like silent sentinels. The woodland bordered their backyard, creating a natural fence between civilization and wilderness. Oliver's mother, Diana, had always loved the proximity to nature, often spotting deer and foxes at dawn when the world was still quiet. But today, as she arranged cupcakes on a platter, she paid little attention to the tree line, focused instead on making her son's birthday perfect. "Mom, can we open presents now?" Oliver called, his cheeks flushed from running. Diana checked her watch. "In 15 minutes, sweetheart. Let's let everyone finish their cake first." Oliver's father, Sam, stood by the grill, flipping the last few hamburgers. The savory smell of cooking meat wafted through the air, mingling with the sweetness of birthday cake and the earthy scent of freshly cut grass. Parents of the party guests sat in lawn chairs, sipping lemonade and sharing stories about their children's latest adventures at school. None of them noticed the first rustle of leaves at the forest edge. None of them heard the labored breathing or saw the initial movement among the underbrush. The children's laughter masked the sound of breaking twigs and rustling foliage. It was Theo who saw her first. He had been running toward the back of the yard when he froze, his sneakers skidding on the grass. His mouth fell open, but no sound came out. His wide eyes fixed on something emerging from the trees. "Theo? What's wrong?" Oliver slowed to a stop beside his friend, following his gaze toward the forest edge. From between 2 towering oak trees, a massive brown form staggered into view. Sunlight caught on her thick fur, illuminating patches of matted brown hair darkened by something wet and glistening. Her head hung low, swaying slightly with each pained step. One of her front paws barely touched the ground as she limped forward. "Bear," Theo whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oliver, it's a bear." The word rippled through the children like an electric current. One by one, they turned toward the forest edge, games forgotten, birthday celebrations suspended in a moment of collective awe and growing fear. The mother bear took another step into the yard. Blood trickled down her right front leg, leaving tiny crimson droplets on the green grass. Her eyes, small and dark amid her broad face, blinked slowly, glazed with pain. She let out a low, rumbling moan that seemed to vibrate the very air. Diana looked up from the cupcakes at the sudden silence. The absence of children's laughter was so unusual that it immediately caught her attention. She turned, a smile frozen on her face, until she saw what had captured everyone's attention. "Sam," she said, her voice calm but tight with tension. "Sam, look." Sam Miller turned from the grill, a spatula still in his hand. The smile slipped from his face as he registered the massive creature that had invaded his son's birthday party. "Nobody move," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving the bear. "Stay absolutely still." The mother bear took another faltering step forward. In the sudden stillness, her labored breathing was clearly audible. A trail of blood marked her path across the lawn, each crimson dot a stark contrast against the vibrant green grass. Oliver stood transfixed, birthday hat still perched jauntily on his head, a half-eaten cupcake forgotten in his hand. He had seen bears before, in zoos and nature documentaries, but never like this. Never so close, never so real, and never so hurt. As the adults slowly reached for their children, pulling them back toward the house with careful, measured movements, Oliver remained still. He watched the bear's eyes, noticing how they weren't fixed on the children or the adults, but seemed to look through them, unfocused and distant. The realization dawned on him with the clarity that sometimes visits children before adults. She wasn't here to hurt anyone, she was here because she was hurting. "She's bleeding," Oliver whispered to Theo, who had edged closer to his friend. "Oliver, come here right now," Diana called softly, her hand outstretched toward her son. The other parents had gathered their children close, some already backing toward the house. The festive atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a tense silence broken only by occasional whispers and the bear's pained breathing. But Oliver didn't move toward his mother. Instead, his eyes remained fixed on the bear as a strange feeling welled up inside him. It wasn't fear, though fear was certainly present. It was something else, something that made his chest feel tight and his throat constrict. The mother bear stumbled, her injured leg buckling beneath her weight. She caught herself, but not before letting out a sound that Oliver would remember for the rest of his life. Not a growl or a roar, but a whimper. A sound of pain and exhaustion, and somehow desperation. And in that moment, as party balloons bobbed overhead and melting ice cream puddled on paper plates, Oliver Miller made a decision that would change everything. "She needs help," he said, his voice small but clear in the hushed backyard. The bear swayed on her feet, her massive head dropping lower. Blood continued to seep from a wound in her shoulder, and now Oliver could see other injuries, scratches across her muzzle, a torn ear, patches of missing fur that revealed raw skin beneath. Diana's voice took on an edge of panic. "Oliver, please, come here now." But Oliver's eyes met the bear's, and in that moment something passed between them, something ancient and wordless, a recognition that transcended species. And Oliver knew, with the unshakable certainty of childhood, that he could not walk away. The injured mother bear took another step forward, then collapsed onto the grass with a heavy thud that seemed to shake the earth. Her sides heaved with each labored breath. Blood pooled beneath her wounded leg, spreading across the lawn like spilled paint. And as the adults gasped and the children stared, Oliver Miller took a single, fateful step toward the fallen bear, setting in motion events that none of them could have possibly imagined on what had begun as an ordinary birthday afternoon. "Oliver Andrew Miller!" His father's voice cracked through the air like thunder. "Stop right there!" Oliver froze, one foot suspended mid-step. He turned to look at his father, whose face had drained of all color. Sam Miller stood with the spatula still clutched in his white-knuckled grip, looking as though he might leap across the yard to snatch his son away from danger. "Dad, she's hurt," Oliver said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. "She needs help." Diana Miller had her phone out, fingers already dialing. "I'm calling animal control," she said, her voice pitched higher than normal. "Everyone, please, let's all move toward the house. Slowly." The other parents were already shepherding their children toward the safety of the Miller home. Some children whimpered softly, clinging to their parents' legs. Others stared, wide-eyed and fascinated, at the enormous creature collapsed on the birthday lawn. But Theo remained beside Oliver, his thin shoulders squared in solidarity with his friend. "Oliver's right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Look at her eyes." The mother bear's eyes were half closed now, her breathing shallow and irregular. Each exhale brought a soft, pained sound that tore at Oliver's heart. Blood continued to seep from her wounds, staining the grass beneath her massive body. "Boys, please," Diana pleaded, holding the phone to her ear. "This is dangerous. Bears are wild animals. She could hurt you without meaning to." A new voice joined the conversation. How did she get hurt? It was Lily Chen, a quiet girl from Oliver's class who rarely spoke above a whisper. She had remained at the edge of the yard, her dark eyes fixed on the bear with a peculiar intensity. Unlike the other children, who showed varying degrees of fear, Lily's expression held only curiosity and concern. "Probably hunters," said a deep voice. Mr. Hargrove, Theo's father, stood with his arms crossed over his chest. He was a forest ranger who often visited Oliver's school to give talks about wildlife conservation. Or she could have been hit by a car. There's a highway not far from these woods. "Can't we do something?" Oliver asked, looking pleadingly at Mr. Hargrove. "Before animal control comes?" "Oliver, honey," Diana said, phone still pressed to her ear. "Animal control will have tranquilizers and proper equipment. They'll know how to help her." "But she's suffering now," Oliver insisted. His birthday hat had fallen off, forgotten on the grass, and she came to us. She must have known somehow that we could help. Sam Miller moved cautiously across the lawn until he stood beside his son. He placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. "Son, I know your heart is in the right place, but this is not a stray dog or a hurt bird. This is a wild bear, probably weighing hundreds of pounds. She could kill you with one swipe of her paw, even if she didn't mean to." Oliver looked up at his father, tears welling in his eyes. "But Dad, look at her, she's dying." His voice broke on the last word, and a tear slid down his cheek. The bear made a low, rumbling sound, her massive head shifting slightly on the grass. Her eyes opened wider for a moment, dark and liquid, seeming to fix directly on Oliver. In that moment, something passed between them. A connection that Oliver couldn't explain but felt to his core. "God, where is animal control?" Diana muttered, pacing in small circles. "They said they're sending someone, but it could be 30 minutes. "She might not have 30 minutes, Theo said quietly. Mr. Hargrove stepped forward, his ranger's training evident in his cautious, measured movements. "The kids might be right," he said, studying the bear from a safe distance. "She's in bad shape, lost a lot of blood." "What are you suggesting, Richard?" Mrs. Hargrove asked, clutching their younger daughter to her side. "That we, regular people at a birthday party, try to treat a wounded bear?" Mr. Hargrove frowned, considering. "Not exactly, but I have a first aid kit in my truck. We might be able to at least slow the bleeding until professionals arrive." A murmur ran through the gathered adults. It seemed absurd, dangerous even. And yet, as they watched the wounded animal's labored breathing, a collective sense of compassion began to override fear. "I want to help too," Lily said, her soft voice somehow carrying across the yard. She stepped forward, standing beside Oliver and Theo. "My mom is a veterinarian. I've watched her treat animals before." All eyes turned to Mrs. Chen, who stood pale-faced by the snack table. She swallowed hard. Lily, this is very different from the cats and dogs in my clinic. But the principles are the same, right? Lily persisted. Stop the bleeding, clean the wound, prevent infection. Mrs. Chen hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Theoretically, yes, but the danger. She's too weak to be dangerous, Oliver said. Look at her. She can barely lift her head. A tense silence fell over the yard. The adults exchanged uncertain glances while the bear's breathing grew more labored. Blood continued to pool beneath her, the crimson stain widening on the grass. Then, from behind the gathered crowd, a new voice spoke. I think the kids are right. Everyone turned to see Zara Williams, a petite girl with dozens of beaded braids and bright, intelligent eyes. She was the newest student in Oliver's class, having moved to their town just 2 months ago. She rarely spoke in school, but when she did, everyone listened. In my old village in Tanzania, Zara continued, her voice soft but clear, my grandfather was a healer. He taught me that all living creatures deserve compassion when they're suffering. She stepped forward, her colorful birthday dress bright against the somber mood. The bear came to us. She chose to come here when she could have gone anywhere in the forest to die alone. The word die hung in the air like a thundercloud. Several children flinched. We can't just watch her die, Oliver said, his voice stronger now. Not at my birthday party, not when we could help. Sam and Diana exchanged a long look. One of those silent conversations that parents have when faced with an impossible situation. Finally, Sam nodded. Richard, he said to Mr. Hargrove, get your first aid kit. Mrs. Chen, any veterinary guidance would be appreciated. Everyone else, please keep a safe distance. But Sam, another parent, began to protest. We'll be careful, Sam assured them. And animal control is on the way. But my son is right. We can't just stand by and do nothing. A flurry of activity followed. Mr. Hargrove jogged to his truck to retrieve his extensive first aid kit. Mrs. Chen approached cautiously, her professional demeanor asserting itself despite her evident fear. Diana continued her phone call, updating animal control on the situation. Oliver, Theo, Lily, and Zara stood their ground, forming a small semicircle several feet from the bear. The other children watched from a safer distance, their birthday treats forgotten in their hands. What should we do first? Oliver asked, looking from Mrs. Chen to Mr. Hargrove as the ranger returned with a large red medical kit. First, we need to see how bad the injuries are without getting too close, Mrs. Chen said, her voice becoming more clinical and confident. And we need something to help slow the bleeding. I have clean towels in the house, Diana offered, already moving toward the back door. The bear's eyes had closed again, her breathing shallow but persistent. She seemed unaware of the commotion around her, lost in her pain. Is she going to die? A small voice asked from the crowd of children. It was Ben Parker, the youngest child at the party, his lower lip trembling. Not if we can help it, Oliver said with more confidence than he felt. Mr. Hargrove opened his first aid kit, revealing an assortment of bandages, gauze, antiseptics, and other medical supplies. We need to be extremely careful, he warned. Even an injured animal can be dangerous if startled or frightened. Diana returned with an armful of clean white towels. These are the best I have, she said, placing them beside the first aid kit. Now what? Theo asked, bouncing slightly on the balls of his feet, eager to help. Now, Mrs. Chen said, taking a deep breath. We need to approach her very slowly and see if she'll let us help. The very idea seemed preposterous. Approaching a wounded wild bear to offer medical assistance. And yet, as they stood there in the strange bubble of time that had formed around Oliver's interrupted birthday party, It also seemed like the only possible course of action. Mr. Hargrove took a clean towel and folded it into a thick pad. "We'll start by trying to slow the bleeding from that shoulder wound," he said. "That appears to be where she's losing the most blood." "Can I do it?" Oliver asked, his voice steady despite the fear fluttering in his chest. She looked at me. I think she might trust me. The adults exchanged glances again, that silent communication of weighing danger against a child's determination. "Oliver," his father began, clearly about to refuse. But the bear shifted then, her massive head turning slightly. Her eyes opened, fixing directly on Oliver once more. She made a soft sound, not a growl, but a low, rumbling whine that seemed to contain all the pain and fear she couldn't express in words. And in that moment, something extraordinary happened. The bear's eyes, dark and intelligent, held Oliver's gaze for a long, suspended moment. Then, as if making a conscious decision, she laid her head back down on the grass and extended her injured leg slightly, exposing the worst of her wounds. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. "Did you see that?" Zara whispered. She understood. Mrs. Chen looked stunned. That's not normal bear behavior." "Maybe she's someone's pet," Theo suggested. "An escaped performing bear or something." Mr. Hargrove shook his head. "No, she's definitely wild, but she's also definitely smart and desperate." He looked at Oliver with new respect. "I think she's asking for help." Oliver swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. "So, can I try?" After another moment of hesitation, Sam nodded. "I'll go with you, son, step by step, okay? And if I say back away, you back away immediately. No questions, no arguments." "Okay, Dad," Oliver agreed solemnly. Mr. Hargrove handed the folded towel to Sam. "Press this firmly against the wound. Don't be afraid to apply pressure. You need to stop the bleeding." Mrs. Chen added, "If she shows any signs of aggression, any growling, baring of teeth, raising her head suddenly, back away immediately." Diana looked as though she might object again, but instead she pressed her lips together and nodded once. This was happening. Together, father and son began to approach the injured bear. They moved with exquisite slowness, their footsteps deliberate and gentle on the grass. Oliver held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The bear watched them come, her dark eyes tracking their movement. She made no attempt to rise or retreat. Blood continued to seep from her wounds, her breathing growing more labored by the minute. When they were within a few feet of her, Oliver could smell her. A musky, wild scent mingled with the metallic tang of blood. He could see the individual hairs of her thick fur, the whiskers on her broad muzzle, the pink tissue visible inside her torn ear. She was frighteningly large up close, even lying down. "Easy," Sam murmured, though whether he was speaking to the bear or to his son wasn't clear. "Easy now." They stopped a yard away from the bear. She watched them, unmoving, except for the shallow rise and fall of her massive chest. "What do we do now, Dad?" Oliver whispered. Sam took a deep breath. "I'll try to press the towel against her shoulder wound. You stay right where you are." But as Sam began to inch forward with the towel, the bear made a sudden, distressed sound. Not aggressive, but pained and fearful. She shifted away from Sam, her eyes wide. "Dad, wait," Oliver said quickly. I think she wants me to do it." The idea seemed ridiculous, even as he said it. How could a wild bear have a preference for which human approached her? And yet, everyone had seen how she looked at Oliver, how she seemed to respond to him. Sam hesitated, the towel clutched in his hands. The bear continued to watch them, her gaze shifting between father and son. "Let me try," Oliver pleaded. "Just once. If she doesn't let me, I'll back away right away." After an agonizing moment of consideration, Sam handed the folded towel to his son. "Be extremely careful," he warned. "Remember what I said about backing away." Oliver nodded solemnly, taking the soft white towel in his small hands. It felt heavy with responsibility. He looked directly into the bear's eyes, wishing he could somehow communicate his intentions. "I'm going to help you," he said softly to the bear. "I promise I'll be gentle." And then, with his father right beside him, Oliver took one small step forward, then another, closing the final distance between himself and the injured wild animal that had crashed his birthday party and changed everything. The entire backyard held its breath as the birthday boy knelt beside the massive predator, a clean white towel clutched in his trembling hands. The juxtaposition was startling. The small, vulnerable human child beside the powerful wild animal. In any other circumstance, it would have been the stuff of nightmares. But this was different. Somehow, everyone knew it. Very slowly, telegraphing his movements, Oliver reached out with the towel. The bear watched him, her dark eyes never leaving his face. When the towel touched her injured shoulder, she flinched slightly but made no move to pull away or to threaten. "Good girl," Oliver whispered, pressing the towel gently against the wound as Mr. Hargrove had instructed. "It's okay. We're going to help you." The white fabric immediately began to turn red with the bear's blood, but Oliver held firm, applying steady pressure as he'd been told to do. The bear made a low sound in her throat. Not a growl, but a sort of rumbling acknowledgement. "Dad," Oliver said quietly, "I think we need another towel." Sam, who hadn't taken his eyes off his son or the bear, nodded and signaled to Diana. She quickly brought another clean towel, passing it to Sam, who then handed it to Oliver. "You're doing great, son," Sam said, his voice tight with controlled fear and grudging pride. "Keep the pressure steady." Behind them, the other children and adults watched in astonished silence. What had begun as a normal birthday party had transformed into something none of them would ever forget. A moment when the usual boundaries between human and wild, between fear and compassion, seemed to dissolve. Theo was the first to break the silence. "I want to help too," he said, stepping forward. "Me too," Lily added, moving to stand beside him. "And me," said Zara, joining the small group. One by one, other children stepped forward, not all of them, but enough to form a determined little band. Their parents looked on with a mixture of terror and amazement, unable to reconcile their protective instincts with the extraordinary scene unfolding before them. Mrs. Chen approached cautiously, her professional demeanor fully engaged now. "If she's allowing contact," she said, "we should examine her other wounds. Richard, what antiseptics do you have in that kit?" Mr. Hargrove began sorting through his supplies. "I have hydrogen peroxide, alcohol wipes, and some antibiotic ointment. Not exactly designed for bear-sized patients, but it's better than nothing." "The shoulder appears to be a puncture wound," Mrs. Chen observed, keeping a respectful distance but close enough to see. "Possibly from a bullet or an arrow." Oliver felt a surge of anger at the thought of someone deliberately hurting the magnificent creature. "Who would shoot a mother bear?" he asked, still maintaining pressure on the wound. "How do you know she's a mother?" Theo asked, kneeling beside his friend. Oliver shook his head. "I don't know, I just feel it." As if in answer to his words, a new sound rose from the forest edge, a high-pitched whine, followed by a rustling in the underbrush. Every head turned toward the tree line, where the foliage was moving in a way that couldn't be explained by the gentle breeze. "Oh my God," Diana breathed, one hand rising to cover her mouth. "There's another one." From between the same trees where the mother bear had emerged, a small shape appeared. A bear cub, no larger than a medium-sized dog. Its fur was the same rich brown as its mother's, its eyes wide and frightened as it took in the scene. "Her baby," Oliver whispered, understanding flooding through him. "That's why she came here. She was trying to find help for her cub, too." The little bear hesitated at the edge of the yard, clearly torn between fear of the humans and concern for its mother. It made another plaintive sound, shifting from paw to paw in obvious distress. The mother bear lifted her head at the sound, a new energy seeming to flow through her despite her injuries. She made a low, gentle huffing noise, a call to her child. Slowly, cautiously, the cub began to make its way across the lawn. It moved with the awkward, rolling gait of the very young. Its round ears perked forward alertly. "Nobody move," Mr. Hargrove cautioned. "Bear cubs can be unpredictable, and if the mother thinks we're threatening her baby, even in her weakened state—" He didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone understood the new layer of danger that had just been added to the situation. The cub approached its mother warily, giving the kneeling humans a wide berth. When it reached the mother bear's side, it pressed itself against her flank, making small, distressed noises. Oliver, still maintaining pressure on the wound, watched the reunion with tears in his eyes. "The cub looks okay," he said. "Not injured, I mean." Mrs. Chen nodded. "It appears healthy, just frightened." "But why would the mother bring it here?" Sam wondered aloud. "If the cub isn't hurt." Zara, who had moved closer to watch the bears, spoke up. "Maybe she knew she was too injured to protect it. Maybe she was looking for help for herself so she could care for her baby." The idea hung in the air. The notion that a wild animal might possess that level of foresight, of trust in humans despite the danger they often posed to her kind. It seemed impossible, and yet— "Bears are highly intelligent," Mr. Hargrove said quietly, "and maternal instinct is a powerful force across species." The cub was snuffling at its mother's face now, licking her muzzle in a gesture that seemed both affectionate and worried. The mother bear responded with gentle movements, her dark eyes occasionally flicking to Oliver, as if to ensure he was still helping. "The bleeding is slowing," Oliver reported, lifting the towel slightly to check. The white fabric was now crimson with blood, but fresh red wasn't seeping through as quickly. Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. "That's good. Richard, can we try to clean the wound now?" Mr. Hargrove prepared antiseptic wipes and gauze pads. "We need to be careful with the cub here. If it feels threatened, the mother might react to protect it." "I'll talk to the cub," Lily offered unexpectedly. Everyone looked at her in surprise. The quiet girl shrugged. "Animals understand tone even if they don't understand words. My mom does it with scared dogs at her clinic." Without waiting for permission, Lily began to speak to the bear cub in a soft, soothing voice. "It's okay, little one. We're helping your mama. She's going to be okay." Remarkably, the cub seemed to respond, its frantic movements calming somewhat as it listened to the gentle human voice. Mr. Hargrove handed antiseptic wipes to Oliver. "Very gently clean around the edges of the wound. Don't press into it." With extreme care, Oliver began to clean the area around the puncture wound in the bear's shoulder. The mother bear flinched slightly but remained still, her eyes watchful but not threatening. "You're doing so well," Oliver told her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're so brave." As he cleaned away the blood, the nature of the wound became clearer. "It looks like a bullet hole," Mr. Hargrove confirmed grimly. went clean through the muscle of her shoulder. She's lucky it didn't hit bone or an artery. "Will she be okay?" Oliver asked anxiously. Mrs. Chen examined the wound carefully from where she knelt. "If we can stop the bleeding and prevent infection, she has a chance. Bears are resilient animals, but she'll need professional veterinary care." "Animal control is 10 minutes out," Diana reported, her phone still in hand. "They're bringing a wildlife veterinarian with them." A sense of cautious hope began to spread through the gathered party guests. What had seemed like an unmitigated disaster, a wounded wild predator crashing a child's birthday party, was transforming into something else entirely. A rescue mission, led by children who refused to let fear overcome compassion. The bear cub had settled beside its mother now, occasionally making soft noises but no longer panicking. It watched the humans with wary curiosity, particularly Oliver, who continued to tend to its mother with gentle, careful movements. "Oliver," Theo said suddenly, "your birthday wish." Oliver looked up, confused. "What?" "Your birthday wish," Theo repeated. "When you blew out the candles earlier, did you wish for something like this?" Oliver shook his head, a small smile forming on his lips despite the tense situation. "I wished for a bike." A ripple of laughter ran through the group, breaking some of the tension that had built up over the past intense minutes. "I think the universe might have misunderstood your order," Sam said, his own face relaxing slightly as he watched his son continue to care for the injured bear with remarkable composure. "I think I got something better," Oliver replied, meeting his father's eyes briefly before returning his attention to the bear. The enormous creature's breathing had steadied somewhat, becoming deeper and more regular. The bleeding had slowed significantly under Oliver's continued pressure. "We should check her other wounds," Mrs. Chen suggested. "That torn ear and the scratches on her muzzle." Lily, still murmuring soft reassurances to the cub, asked, "What do you think happened to her? Who would shoot a mother bear?" Mr. Hargrove's expression darkened. "Poachers, possibly. There's been an increase in illegal hunting in these woods lately. The rangers have been trying to catch them for months." "That's horrible," Zara said, her voice sharp with indignation. "Bears aren't hurting anyone. They're just trying to live." "Some people only see dollar signs," Mr. Hargrove replied grimly. "Bear gallbladders sell for thousands on the black market in some countries. They're used in traditional medicine." The children absorbed this information with solemn faces, their innocence confronting one of the harsher realities of the adult world. Oliver gently placed a fresh gauze pad over the cleaned shoulder wound. "We won't let them hurt you again," he promised the bear softly. As if understanding his words, the mother bear made a low rumbling sound and shifted slightly, bringing her massive head closer to Oliver's knee. The movement sent a ripple of tension through the watching adults, but Oliver remained calm. Slowly, the bear lifted her head and extended her muzzle toward Oliver's hand. He held perfectly still, heart pounding, as the enormous predator sniffed his fingers, her wet nose gently touching his skin. "Oh my God," Diana whispered, her hands pressed to her mouth. The bear held Oliver's scent for a long moment, then lowered her head back to the grass with a heavy sigh. The cub, watching this interaction, crept closer to Oliver, its natural curiosity temporarily overcoming its fear. "Don't move, Oliver," Mr. Hargrove warned as the cub approached. "Let it come to you." Oliver nodded, maintaining his position beside the mother bear while her cub investigated him with obvious interest. The small bear sniffed Oliver's shoes, then his pants leg, making small, huffing noises. "Hi there," Oliver whispered to the cub. "It's okay. We're helping your mom." From the driveway came the sound of vehicles approaching. The animal control team had arrived. The noise startled the cub, which scurried back to its mother's side with a frightened whine. The mother bear stirred, her head raising slightly as she sensed a new potential threat. "Oliver, back away now," Sam said urgently. "Let the professionals take over." But Oliver hesitated, his hand still on the gauze pad covering the bear's wound. "She's scared. The vehicles are scaring her." Indeed, the mother bear was showing the first signs of agitation since the extraordinary encounter had begun. Her breathing quickened, and she made a low, warning sound in her throat. "Everyone, back up slowly," Mr. Hargrove instructed, his voice tense. "Give her space." The adults and children began to retreat, moving with careful, measured steps. But Oliver remained where he was, his eyes locked with the bear's. "It's okay," he told her softly. "They're here to help you. They can make you better so you can take care of your baby." The bear's agitation seemed to ease somewhat at the sound of his voice. She settled back down, though her eyes remained fixed on the driveway where car doors were now slamming and voices could be heard. "Oliver, please," Diana called, her voice strained with fear for her son. "Just one more minute, Mom," Oliver replied, still looking into the bear's eyes. "I need to tell her it's going to be okay." And in the strange bubble of understanding that had formed between boy and bear, Oliver continued to murmur reassurances as the wildlife team approached. The mother bear remained calm under his touch, as if she had decided to trust this small human completely. The animal control officers and wildlife veterinarian entered the backyard, stopping short at the extraordinary scene before them. A child kneeling beside a wounded mother bear and her cub, surrounded by a birthday party frozen in time. Balloons still bobbing cheerfully overhead in stark contrast to the drama below. "What in the world?" one officer muttered, his tranquilizer gun held loosely at his side. Mr. Hargrove stepped forward to explain the situation, speaking quietly to avoid startling the bears. The wildlife veterinarian, a tall woman with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, listened with increasing astonishment. "You're telling me this bear just walked into a birthday party, collapsed, and let a bunch of kids treat her wounds?" she asked incredulously. "Just look," Mr. Hargrove replied, gesturing to where Oliver still knelt beside the injured animal. The veterinarian shook her head in amazement. "In 30 years of wildlife medicine, I've never seen anything like this." "What do we do now?" Diana asked anxiously. "Will you have to put her down?" The question hung in the air like a shadow. Oliver's head snapped up, his eyes wide with alarm. "No!" he protested. "She can get better. She just needs help." The veterinarian approached cautiously, her experienced eyes assessing the bear's condition. "Let me examine her first before we make any decisions," she said. "Young man, you've done an excellent job with first aid. Can you tell me what you've observed?" Oliver, still maintaining gentle pressure on the gauze pad, reported everything he had noticed about the bear's injuries and behavior. The veterinarian listened attentively, nodding occasionally. "I'll need to get closer to examine her properly," she said finally. "I have a tranquilizer here that will keep her calm and pain-free while we transport her." "Transport her where?" Oliver asked. "We have a wildlife rehabilitation facility about 40 miles from here," the veterinarian explained. "If her injuries are treatable, that's where she'll go." "And her baby too?" Oliver pressed. The veterinarian nodded. "Of course, cubs this young can't survive without their mothers." Relief washed over Oliver's face. "Did you hear that?" he whispered to the bear. "You're going to a hospital. They'll make you better." The bear made a soft sound, her dark eyes still fixed on Oliver's face. I need you to back away now so I can sedate her, the veterinarian said gently. You've done everything you can. Oliver nodded, giving the bear one last reassuring pat before slowly standing and backing away. The mother bear watched him go, making no move to stop him. Ready with the tranquilizer, one of the animal control officers said, raising his gun. Wait, the veterinarian instructed, watching the bear closely. She's unusually calm. I might be able to administer the sedative manually without stressing her further. With extreme caution, the experienced wildlife doctor approached the bear, a loaded syringe in hand. The bear watched her warily but made no threatening movements. Incredible, the veterinarian murmured. She really does seem to understand we're trying to help. With swift, practiced movements, she injected the sedative into the bear's haunch. The mother bear flinched but didn't react aggressively. Within minutes, her eyes began to droop as the medication took effect. The cub grew agitated as its mother became less responsive, making distressed noises and nudging at her face. We'll need to sedate the cub too, the veterinarian said, for its own safety during transport. Oliver watched anxiously as the wildlife team worked. His birthday party now completely forgotten. The cake sat abandoned on the table, the presents untouched, the games suspended. None of it seemed to matter anymore compared to the fate of the bears. Will you tell me what happens to them? He asked the veterinarian, as she prepared a smaller dose of sedative for the cub. Can I visit them at the rehabilitation place? The veterinarian looked at him thoughtfully. That's not usually allowed, she said. But this is an unusual case. I'll see what I can arrange. As the wildlife team worked to prepare the bears for transport, the birthday guests began to disperse, parents leading their children away with promises of sharing this unbelievable story with anyone who would listen. The Miller backyard gradually emptied until only Oliver's family, the Hargroves, and Zara's family remained, watching the operation with fascinated attention. You know, Sam said, placing an arm around his son's shoulders, this is not how I expected your birthday to go. Oliver leaned against his father, suddenly feeling the emotional and physical exhaustion of the past hour. Me neither, but I'm glad it happened. You were very brave, Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm proud of you, son. Diana joined them, wrapping her arms around Oliver from the other side. My heart nearly stopped a dozen times, she admitted. But you knew exactly what to do. How did you know? Oliver shook his head. I didn't know. I just felt it, like she was asking me for help. The mother bear was fully sedated now, her massive body limp on the grass. The cub, too, had been safely tranquilized and placed in a special carrier. The wildlife team was preparing to move the mother bear onto a sturdy tarpaulin for transport to their vehicle. Careful with her shoulder, Oliver called out, unable to stop himself from offering one last piece of advice. The veterinarian gave him a reassuring nod. We'll take good care of her, she promised. Both of them. As the team lifted the tarpaulin with the sedated bear, Oliver stepped forward. Wait, he said. Can I touch her one more time? To say goodbye? After a brief hesitation, the veterinarian nodded. Quickly, please, we need to get her settled. Oliver approached the sleeping bear and gently placed his hand on her broad forehead. Her fur was thick and coarse beneath his fingers, her skin warm despite her injuries. Get better, he whispered to her. Your baby needs you. Then he stepped back, watching as the wildlife team carefully maneuvered the mother bear into their specially equipped vehicle. The cub, secured in its carrier, was placed beside its mother where it would be able to see and smell her during the journey. As the vehicles pulled away from the Miller home, Oliver stood in the driveway, watching until they disappeared from view. The yard behind him was a mess of discarded first aid supplies, blood-stained towels, and abandoned party decorations. His birthday celebration had been thoroughly disrupted, transformed into something unrecognizable, yet somehow more significant than any party could ever be. "Well," Diana said, surveying the aftermath with a somewhat shell-shocked expression, "I guess we should clean up and maybe try to salvage some of your birthday, Oliver. You haven't even opened your presents." But Oliver shook his head. "That doesn't matter now," he said. "Can we go to the wildlife place instead? To see how they're doing?" Sam and Diana exchanged looks over their son's head. "It's a 40-mile drive," Sam said gently, "and they probably won't let us see the bears right away. They'll need time to treat them properly." "Please," Oliver said, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the wildlife vehicle had disappeared. "I need to know if she's going to be okay." Diana sighed, recognizing the determination in her son's voice. "Let me call the center first," she said. "See if it's even possible." While Diana made the call, Theo approached Oliver, his face solemn. "That was the coolest birthday party ever," he said, "even if we didn't finish the games or open presents." Oliver managed a small smile. "Yeah, I guess it was. Do you think—" Theo hesitated, then continued. "Do you think the bear knew? That you would help her, I mean?" Oliver considered the question seriously. "I think she was desperate," he said finally. "And maybe animals can sense things about people that we don't understand." Zara joined them, her colorful beaded braids catching the afternoon sunlight. "In my grandfather's village, they believe some people have a special connection with animals," she said. "A gift for understanding them. Maybe you have that gift, Oliver." The idea hung in the air between them, neither impossible nor entirely believable. Just one more extraordinary element in a day that had already defied all expectations. Diana returned, her phone call complete. "The rehabilitation center says we can come, but we won't be able to see the bears immediately. They're going into emergency treatment." "That's okay," Oliver said quickly. "I just want to be there." "Then let's go," Sam decided. "Theo, Zara, would you like to come with us? I've already spoken with your parents." Both children nodded eagerly. Within minutes, they were piled into the Miller family SUV, leaving behind the remnants of the interrupted birthday party. As they pulled out of the driveway, Oliver looked back at the yard where, just hours ago, his only concern had been whether he'd get the bike he wanted for his birthday. Now, that seemed impossibly trivial compared to the life of the injured mother bear and her cub. The drive to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center took nearly an hour, much of it spent in thoughtful silence. Occasionally, one of the children would ask a question about bears or wildlife rescue, which Sam did his best to answer. Diana made several phone calls, updating the other parents and arranging for someone to clean up the party remnants. When they finally arrived at the center, they found a modern facility nestled in a clearing surrounded by dense forest. A sign at the entrance read, "Northern Pines Wildlife Rehabilitation Center," in earthy green letters. Inside, they were met by Dr. Elena Mendoza, the veterinarian who had overseen the bear's transport. Her gray hair was now pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she had changed into surgical scrubs. "The birthday boy," she said when she saw Oliver, a smile softening her stern features. "And friends. I'm glad you came." "How are they?" Oliver asked immediately, not bothering with pleasantries. Dr. Mendoza's expression grew more serious. "The mother is in surgery right now," she said. "The bullet wound was our primary concern, but we discovered other injuries as well. Old scars, a fracture that healed improperly, signs of malnutrition. She's been through a lot." But she'll live, right? Oliver pressed, his face pale with worry. The veterinarian placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. We're doing everything we can, she said. She's a fighter, that one. And she has a very good reason to survive. She nodded toward a door marked nursery. Her cub is doing well. Would you like to see him? Oliver's eyes widened. We can see the baby? From the observation window, Dr. Mendoza clarified. We're keeping human contact minimal so he doesn't become habituated. But yes, you can see him. She led them down a short hallway to a large window that looked into a comfortably appointed room. Inside, the bear cub was curled up on a soft blanket, sleeping off the effects of the sedative. Even in sleep, his small paws twitched occasionally, as if he were dreaming of running through the forest. He's so small, Zara whispered, placing her palm against the glass. About 4 months old, Dr. Mendoza said. Old enough to eat solid food, but still dependent on his mother for protection and guidance. Bears typically stay with their mothers for up to 2 years. What will happen to them? Theo asked. After they get better, I mean. Dr. Mendoza leaned against the wall, considering the question. Ideally, once the mother has recovered fully, we'll release them back into the wild, but far from where they were injured. We want to make sure they're not in an area frequented by poachers. And if she doesn't recover fully? Diana asked quietly, the question Oliver had been afraid to voice. A shadow crossed the veterinarian's face. Let's cross that bridge if we come to it, she said. For now, we focus on giving her the best care possible. A door opened at the end of the hallway, and a young man in scrubs hurried toward them. Dr. Mendoza, he called, slightly out of breath. They need you in surgery. There's a complication. The veterinarian's face tightened. Excuse me, she said to the Millers and their friends. The waiting area is through that door. Help yourselves to coffee or snacks. This might take a while. She hurried away, leaving them standing at the observation window, the sleeping cub oblivious to the drama unfolding around its mother. A complication, Oliver repeated, his voice small. That sounds bad. Sam put an arm around his son's shoulders. They have excellent doctors here, he said reassuringly. The best equipment. If anyone can help her, they can. They made their way to the waiting area, a comfortable room with couches, vending machines, and a small kitchenette. A few other people sat quietly reading magazines or looking at their phones. Other visitors waiting for news about injured wildlife, perhaps. The minutes stretched into hours. Theo and Zara played a half-hearted game of cards they found on a side table. Diana made phone calls, arranging for Oliver's birthday celebration to be rescheduled. Sam flipped through wildlife magazines, occasionally reading interesting facts aloud to distract the children. But Oliver couldn't focus on any of these activities. He sat by the window, watching the forest outside and thinking about the mother bear fighting for her life somewhere in the building. It was nearly dark when Dr. Mendoza finally returned, her scrubs replaced by clean ones, her face lined with fatigue but wearing a small smile. She made it through surgery, she announced without preamble, knowing exactly what they were waiting to hear. It was touch and go for a while. The bullet had fragmented, and we had to remove several small pieces, but she's stable now. A collective sigh of relief went through the small group. Oliver's shoulders, which had been tense for hours, finally relaxed. Can we see her? He asked. Dr. Mendoza shook her head. Not tonight. She's heavily sedated and needs complete rest. But if you'd like to come back tomorrow, I might be able to arrange a brief visit. We'll come back, Oliver said immediately, looking to his parents for confirmation. Right? Of course, Diana assured him. We'll come back tomorrow. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Mendoza pulled Oliver aside. "I wanted to tell you," she said quietly, "that what you did today was remarkable. Not many adults, let alone children, would have had the courage to help a wounded wild animal like that. You may have saved her life." Oliver flushed, with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. "I just did what felt right," he said. "Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do," the veterinarian replied, "especially when everyone else is telling you it's too dangerous or impossible." She paused, studying him thoughtfully. "Would you be interested in coming back here sometimes? We have a junior volunteer program for children your age. Nothing dangerous, mostly helping with feeding the smaller animals, learning about wildlife conservation, that sort of thing." Oliver's eyes widened. "Really? I could do that?" "With your parents' permission, of course," Dr. Mendoza said with a smile. "But yes, I think you'd be perfect for it." The drive home was much lighter in spirit than the journey to the center had been. The children chattered excitedly about the bear cub, the rehabilitation center, and the possibility of Oliver becoming a junior volunteer. Even Diana and Sam seemed more relaxed, the worst of the day's tension behind them. It wasn't until they pulled into their driveway that they noticed something was wrong. The outdoor lights of their home were all on, unusual for this time of night, and a police car was parked at the curb. "What's happening?" Diana murmured, a new worry creasing her brow. They found out as soon as they stepped into the house. Mr. Hargrove was sitting at their kitchen table with a police officer and a man in the uniform of a park ranger. They all looked up when the Miller family entered, their expressions grave. "Sam, Diana," Mr. Hargrove said, rising to his feet. "Glad you're back. We have a situation." "Is it about the bear?" Sam asked, ushering the children into the living room where they could talk privately. The park ranger nodded. "Partly. I'm Ranger Mike Collins. We've been investigating a poaching ring operating in these woods for months now. When Richard here told me about what happened at your son's birthday party, it was the break we've been waiting for." "The mother bear was shot by poachers?" Diana asked, though they had already suspected as much. "Yes," the ranger confirmed. "But there's more to it. The bullet we recovered from your backyard, which your neighbor thoughtfully collected before animal control cleaned up, matches casings we found at other poaching sites. This is part of an organized operation, not just opportunistic hunters." "But that's not all," the police officer added, his face stern. "We have reason to believe the poachers know their bear was found here, and they're not happy about it." A chill ran through the room. "What does that mean?" Sam asked, instinctively glancing toward the living room where the children waited. "It means," Ranger Collins said grimly, "that they might see your family as a threat. Witnesses who could identify them or their operation. We're arranging protection for your home tonight, and tomorrow we'll discuss longer-term options." Diana sank into a chair. "This is unbelievable," she whispered. "This morning we were planning a birthday party, and now we're what? In danger from illegal wildlife traffickers?" "We don't want to alarm you unnecessarily," the officer said, "but we also don't want to take chances. These people are dealing with high-value animal parts on the black market. There's a lot of money at stake." "What should we tell the children?" Sam asked, his voice low. Mr. Hargrove spoke up. "The truth, but in a way that won't terrify them. They should be alert but not panicked. And until this is resolved, it would be best if they stayed close to home or school." The adults moved to the living room, where Oliver, Theo, and Zara were sitting quietly, clearly aware that something serious was being discussed. The ranger and police officer introduced themselves more formally, then explained the situation in simpler terms. "So, the people who hurt the mother bear might be mad at us for helping her?" Oliver asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. They might be, Ranger Collins confirmed, which is why we're going to have police officers keeping an eye on your house for a while, just to be safe. But you're going to catch them, right? Oliver pressed. The people who shot her? The ranger's expression softened as he looked at the determined boy. That's exactly what we're going to do, and the evidence from your backyard is going to help us do it. After the officials left, with a promise that a patrol car would remain outside all night, the Millers brought Theo and Zara to their respective homes, explaining the situation to their parents. Both families were understandably shaken but grateful for the protective measures being taken. Back at home, Oliver found it difficult to prepare for bed. The day had been an emotional roller coaster, from birthday excitement to the bear rescue, from the tense surgery wait to the alarming news about the Poachers. His mind raced with questions and concerns. "Try to get some sleep," Diana said as she tucked him in. An unnecessary gesture for a 10-year-old, but one that brought comfort to them both. "Tomorrow, we'll go back to the rehabilitation center and check on the bears. Then, we'll figure out everything else." "Mom," Oliver said as she turned to leave, "do you think I did the right thing? Helping the bear, even though it's causing all this trouble?" Diana sat back down on the edge of his bed. "Oliver, listen to me," she said firmly. "You absolutely did the right thing. You showed compassion and courage when many people would have chosen fear. Whatever happens next, never doubt that." Somewhat reassured, Oliver finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams filled with bears and forests, and the strange, unexpected twists that life could take. The next morning brought rain, a steady drizzle that painted the world in shades of gray and green. The police car was still parked outside, though with a different officer inside. A reminder that the danger had not passed with the night. Over breakfast, Sam outlined the plan for the day. "We'll go to the rehabilitation center first," he said, buttering toast with deliberate calm. "Then I have a meeting with Ranger Collins at the station to discuss next steps." "What about my birthday party?" Oliver asked. "Are we still going to reschedule it?" Diana and Sam exchanged glances. "We might have to wait a bit longer than we thought," Diana said carefully. "Just until this situation with the Poachers is resolved." Oliver nodded, accepting this change with surprising equanimity. "That's okay. Seeing the bears is more important right now." The drive to Northern Pines Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was quieter than the day before, each of them lost in their own thoughts. A police cruiser followed discreetly behind them, another precaution that the ranger had insisted upon. At the center, they were met by a different staff member, a young woman with bright red hair and a name tag that read, "Kelsey, Wildlife Technician." "Dr. Mendoza is checking on your bear," she told them with a smile. "She asked me to take you to the observation area. The mother is awake this morning." She led them down a different hallway than the one they'd visited the day before. This corridor ended in a room with a large one-way glass window looking into what appeared to be a recovery area for larger animals. Inside, lying on a bed of straw, was the mother bear. She looked different in the clinical setting, smaller somehow, more vulnerable without the backdrop of the forest. Bandages covered her shoulder and parts of her side. An IV line ran into her foreleg, secured with medical tape. Despite these interventions, she seemed alert, her dark eyes scanning her unfamiliar surroundings with wary intelligence. "She's doing remarkably well," Dr. Mendoza said, entering the observation room behind them. "Her vitals are stable, and she's already trying to stand up, though we're sedating her enough to prevent that for now. She needs to rest and let those wounds heal." "Where's her baby?" Oliver asked, pressing closer to the glass. "In a separate enclosure for now," the veterinarian explained. "We'll reintroduce them once she's stronger. The cub is doing fine, eating well and very active this morning. Can she see us? Oliver asked, placing his palm against the glass. No, it's one-way glass. We want to minimize stress by reducing her awareness of human presence. Oliver nodded, but he continued to watch the bear intently, as if trying to communicate with her through the barrier. Dr. Mendoza observed him for a moment, then made a decision. Would you like to come into the treatment room with me, just for a minute? She's sedated enough that it's safe, and I need to check her bandages anyway. Diana looked alarmed. Is that a good idea after everything that happened yesterday? The veterinarian gave her a reassuring smile. I wouldn't suggest it if I thought there was any danger. She's on medication that keeps her calm, and I'll be right there the whole time. Sometimes, with intelligent animals like bears, it helps their recovery to see a familiar face, especially one they associate with help rather than harm. After a moment's hesitation, Diana nodded her consent. Dr. Mendoza led Oliver to a door at the side of the observation room. We'll go in very quietly, she instructed. Move slowly and stay beside me. If I tell you to back up or leave, you do it immediately, no questions. Understood? Oliver nodded solemnly, his heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. They entered the treatment room, which smelled of antiseptic and straw. The bear's head turned at their entrance, her dark eyes fixing on them immediately. Easy, girl, Dr. Mendoza murmured. Just checking your bandages and look who's come to visit. The bear's gaze shifted to Oliver, and for a moment the boy felt a jolt of recognition pass between them, the same inexplicable connection he had felt in his backyard. Hi, he said softly. Remember me? You're safe now. The bear made a low sound in her throat, not threatening, but acknowledgement. Dr. Mendoza looked surprised. She remembers you, she said, kneeling beside the bear to examine the bandages on her shoulder. I've never seen anything quite like this. Oliver remained where he was, just inside the door, watching as the veterinarian checked various monitors and adjusted the bear's IV line. The massive animal remained calm throughout, her eyes occasionally shifting to Oliver, as if reassuring herself of his presence. The bullet fragments are all removed, Doctor, Mendoza explained as she worked, and there's no sign of infection so far. Her biggest challenge now will be regaining strength and mobility in that shoulder. Bears use their front legs extensively for climbing, digging, hunting, all essential survival skills. Will she be able to do those things again? Oliver asked anxiously. Dr. Mendoza straightened up. With proper rehabilitation, yes. But it will take time and careful management. The good news is that she's young and otherwise healthy. That gives her a much better chance. She nodded toward the door, indicating it was time to leave. Oliver gave the bear one last look. I'll come back, he promised her quietly. As they exited the treatment room, Dr. Mendoza placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder. You know, she said thoughtfully, we haven't named her yet. We usually give temporary names to the animals in our care. Helps with record keeping and discussion. Would you like to suggest one? Oliver considered this honor seriously. Artemis, he said after a moment. From the myth we learned about in school. She was the goddess of the hunt and protector of young animals. Dr. Mendoza smiled. Artemis it is, then. And for her cub? Apollo, Oliver decided immediately. Artemis's twin brother in the stories. Artemis and Apollo, the veterinarian repeated. Perfect. When they rejoined Sam and Diana in the observation room, Oliver eagerly shared the news about the bears' names. His parents exchanged fond glances at his enthusiasm. Dr. Mendoza, Sam said after a moment, There's something we should tell you about the situation with these bears. It's become more complicated." He explained about the poaching ring and the potential threat to their family, watching as the veterinarian's expression grew increasingly grave. "I had no idea," she said when he finished. "This explains why the ranger called me this morning asking about security at our facility." "Is it secure here?" Diana asked anxiously. "Could these people somehow get to the bears?" Dr. Mendoza shook her head firmly. "We have excellent security. Cameras, alarms, staff on site 24/7. And now that I know the situation, we'll take extra precautions. These bears will be completely safe with us." A thought seemed to strike her. But this might affect our rehabilitation plan. If these poachers are operating in your local forest, we might need to release Artemis and Apollo in a completely different territory once they're recovered. That complicates things. "Why?" Oliver asked. "Bears are highly territorial and familiar with their home ranges," the veterinarian explained. "Releasing them into unfamiliar territory can be stressful and dangerous, especially for a mother with a cub. But in this case, we might not have a choice." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ranger Collins, who had come to provide an update and to see the bears for himself. "We've made progress," he told them, his expression cautiously optimistic. "Based on the bullet evidence and some witness reports, we've identified 2 suspects. We're conducting surveillance on them now, hoping they'll lead us to the rest of the operation." "How long will that take?" Sam asked. The ranger shrugged. "Hard to say. Could be days, could be weeks. These operations can be extensive, with multiple players and connections to buyers overseas. We want to dismantle the entire network, not just catch the shooters." "Weeks?" Diana repeated, dismayed. "We can't live with police protection for weeks." "Actually," Ranger Collins said, lowering his voice, "we've been discussing that. It might be safer for your family to temporarily relocate until we've apprehended all the suspects. Just as a precaution." The suggestion hung in the air, its implications slowly sinking in. Leave their home? Oliver's school? Their entire lives disrupted because they had helped an injured bear? "Where would we go?" Diana asked, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "We have safe houses for situations like this," the ranger explained. "Or, if you prefer, you could stay with relatives outside the area. The important thing is to be somewhere the suspects couldn't easily find you." Oliver listened to this exchange with growing distress. Leave home? Leave the rehabilitation center just when Artemis was beginning to recover? Leave his friends, his school, everything familiar? "What about the bears?" he burst out. "If we go away, who will check on them?" Dr. Mendoza placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I will, Oliver, every day, and I'll send you updates and photos, I promise." But it wasn't the same, and everyone knew it. The connection Oliver had formed with the mother bear was unusual, special. Being separated from her now, when her recovery was just beginning, felt wrong somehow. "Do we have to decide right now?" Sam asked the ranger. Ranger Collins shook his head. "Not this minute, no, but soon. Today or tomorrow at the latest. The surveillance is ongoing, but if the suspects realize they're being watched, things could escalate quickly." The rest of their visit to the rehabilitation center was overshadowed by this difficult decision. They got to see Apollo, the bear cub, who was indeed active and lively, tumbling around his enclosure with the boundless energy of the young. Under other circumstances, his antics would have brought pure joy. Now, they were tinged with the knowledge of impending separation. On the drive home, Oliver was uncharacteristically quiet, staring out the window at the rain-drenched landscape. Diana reached back from the front seat to squeeze his knee. "I know this is hard," she said softly, But your safety has to come first. We'll figure this out, I promise." Oliver nodded but didn't reply. His mind was racing, trying to find a solution that wouldn't involve leaving Artemis and Apollo behind. At home, the day passed in a blur of phone calls and discussions. Sam and Diana debated various options: staying with Diana's sister in Colorado, renting a house in a neighboring state, accepting the ranger's offer of a safe house. Oliver drifted through the house, half listening to these conversations, feeling increasingly helpless. By evening, a decision had been made. They would leave the next day for Diana's sister's home in Denver, staying there until the ranger deemed it safe to return. It was far enough away to be secure, but still with family who could help them adjust to the temporary displacement. "We'll pack tonight," Diana announced, trying to sound positive. "Think of it as an unexpected vacation. Aunt Melissa has that pool you loved last summer, remember?" Oliver nodded automatically, but his heart wasn't in it. As he went to his room to begin packing, he felt a weight on his chest that had nothing to do with physical exertion. He was placing clothes in his suitcase when there was a soft knock at his bedroom door. Theo stood there, a worried expression on his face. "My mom told me you're leaving," he said without preamble. "Because of the Poachers." Oliver nodded glumly. "Tomorrow morning, we're going to my aunt's house in Colorado." Theo entered the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "That's really far away." "I know. And I won't get to see Artemis and Apollo anymore. Dr. Mendoza said she'd send pictures, but it's not the same." Theo nodded in understanding. The two boys sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging between them. "Maybe," Theo began hesitantly, "maybe there's another way?" Oliver looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Theo leaned forward, lowering his voice even though they were alone in the room. "What if, instead of running away from the Poachers, we helped catch them?" "How would we do that?" Oliver asked, intrigued despite himself. "The Rangers and police are already trying." "But they don't have what we have," Theo said, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "What's that?" "A connection to the bears." Theo stood up, pacing the small room as his idea took shape. "Think about it. Those Poachers were after Artemis specifically, right? They must have been tracking her. Maybe they even have a way of finding bears that the Rangers don't know about." Oliver nodded slowly, beginning to follow his friend's line of thinking. "And if we could figure out how they're tracking bears, we could set a trap," Theo finished. "Not a real trap, but like information that would lead them somewhere the Rangers could catch them." The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. Two 10-year-old boys against a ring of dangerous wildlife traffickers? It seemed absurd, and yet... "We'd need help," Oliver said, his mind racing now. "Adult help, but not my parents. They'd never agree." "What about Mr. Hargrove?" Theo suggested. "He's a forest ranger. He knows about tracking and wildlife. And he saw how you connected with Artemis. He might believe in us." The seed of a plan began to take root. It was dangerous, potentially foolish, but it offered something the current situation didn't: a chance to actively help rather than passively hide. "I need to talk to him tonight," Oliver said, decision crystallizing. "Before we leave tomorrow." Theo nodded. "I'll tell him it's urgent. He can come over after dinner." The boys spent the next hour refining their idea, jotting notes on a piece of paper they carefully tucked away when Diana called them for dinner. Throughout the meal, Oliver picked at his food, his mind elsewhere. His parents attributed his distraction to upset over the impending move. They had no idea that he was formulating a plan that, if successful, might eliminate the need to leave at all. After dinner, as promised, Theo brought his father over. Mr. Hargrove looked puzzled but concerned as the two boys led him to Oliver's room for a private conversation. "What's this urgent matter, boys?" he asked, sitting on the desk chair while they perched on the bed. "Your dad's a bit busy tonight, Oliver, with all the preparations." "We know," Oliver said solemnly. "That's why we wanted to talk to you privately. We have an idea about the Poachers." Mr. Hargrove's expression shifted from puzzled to wary. What kind of idea? The boys laid out their thoughts. About the Poachers possibly tracking bears. About using that knowledge to help the authorities set a trap. About Oliver's unusual connection with Artemis potentially being useful somehow. To their relief, Mr. Hargrove didn't immediately dismiss their idea as childish fantasy. He listened thoughtfully, his forehead creased in concentration. "You're not entirely wrong," he said when they finished. "We do suspect they're using tracking methods we haven't identified yet. The precision of their poaching suggests they know exactly where to find specific animals." "So, our idea could work?" Theo asked eagerly. Mr. Hargrove held up a cautionary hand. "Hold on. While your thinking is on the right track, the actual implementation would be far too dangerous for children to be involved in. But we're not asking to confront the Poachers ourselves," Oliver clarified quickly. "Just to help figure out how they're tracking the bears. Even that could put you in their crosshairs," Mr. Hargrove said firmly. "These are dangerous people, boys. They've already threatened your family indirectly." Oliver's shoulders slumped in disappointment. Another adult telling them to stay out of the way, to let the grown-ups handle everything. But then Mr. Hargrove added, "However, there might be a way you could help from a safe distance." Both boys perked up immediately. "The ranger team has been collecting data on bear movements and poaching incidents," Mr. Hargrove explained. "We're trying to identify patterns, but it's slow going. Fresh eyes might see something we've missed. If I brought you some of the non-confidential maps and data, maybe you could look them over." It wasn't the dramatic, hands-on involvement they had imagined, but it was something. A way to contribute, to feel less helpless. "We could do that," Oliver said, exchanging a quick glance with Theo. "But what about us leaving tomorrow? We won't have time." Mr. Hargrove considered this complication. "Let me talk to Ranger Collins. If your analysis could genuinely help, he might be willing to postpone your family's relocation for a day or two. But no promises, and your parents would have to agree." That was enough for Oliver. A delay was better than nothing. And once they started looking at the data, who knew what they might discover? "Thank you, Mr. Hargrove," he said sincerely. "We just want to help. Artemis came to us, trusted us. It feels wrong to just run away." The ranger nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know, son. Sometimes the hardest part of caring for wildlife is knowing when to step back and let nature take its course. But in this case, with poachers involved, the normal rules don't quite apply." He stood up, preparing to leave. "I'll speak with your father and Ranger Collins tonight. Try to get some sleep, both of you. If we're going to look at that data tomorrow, I'll need you sharp and focused." After Mr. Hargrove and Theo left, Oliver continued packing half-heartedly, uncertain whether they would still be leaving in the morning. Part of him hoped for the delay Mr. Hargrove had suggested. Another part worried about what they might find in the poaching data. Or worse, what they might not find. What if their idea led nowhere, and they still had to leave, having accomplished nothing? He was placing the last of his clothes in the suitcase when his father appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Richard Hargrove just told me about your conversation," Sam said, entering the room and sitting on the edge of the bed. "About wanting to help catch the poachers." Oliver tensed, preparing for a lecture about staying out of adult matters or focusing on his own safety. Instead, Sam surprised him. "I understand why you want to do this, son. I'm proud of your determination to help, but you need to understand something important." "What's that?" Oliver asked cautiously. "Your mother and I aren't taking you away from here to punish you or because we don't care about what happens to the bears. We're doing it because we love you more than anything in the world, and keeping you safe is our most important job." Oliver nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I know, Dad. I feel like I'm abandoning them, like I promised to help and now I'm running away." Sam placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You've already helped them more than most people ever would. Without you, Artemis would have died in our backyard. Instead, she's getting expert care and has a chance at recovery. That's no small thing. But what about the poachers? If they're still out there, other bears could get hurt." Sam was quiet for a moment, considering. Richard suggested that looking at the tracking data might actually be helpful to the investigation, and Ranger Collins thinks it's worth a try, so we've agreed to delay our departure by 1 day. Oliver's heart leapt. "Really? We're staying?" "Just for tomorrow," Sam cautioned. "1 day for you and Theo to look at the data with Richard. Then, regardless of what you find, we're leaving for Denver the following morning. Those are the terms, non-negotiable." "Okay," Oliver agreed quickly. "That's fair. Thank you, Dad." Sam smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "You're a remarkable kid, you know that. Not many people would care this much about a wild animal, let alone risk their own safety to help." "I just did what felt right," Oliver said, echoing.